So Larry Cornett is a leadership coach. I have not had the privilege to sit under his tutorship before, and we're all going to have that today. He has spent over 20 years in Silicon Valley, and he's worked his way up the ranks. From being a designer to a UX leader to being a product executive, and finally a startup founder. So please join me, everyone, to welcome Mr. Larry Cornett.
Well, thank you for inviting me here today. It's an honor to be speaking with you. I've presented at conferences and workshops and other events throughout my career, but this is the first time that I've had the pleasure of speaking at a graduation. And it's definitely a unique experience with Zoom. I think we've had a lot of unique experiences with Zoom this year because we've had so many virtual ceremonies that have had to be taking place through video conferencing. We're certainly living in interesting times, and these experiences and your time with Brave Achievers are preparing you for an exciting future. I've enjoyed being introduced to this organization and learning more about your programs. This statement on your website resonated with me. I'm going to pull it up, and it aligns well with how I've been thinking about remote work this year. We believe that every individual in the world should be able to work with any organization in the world where their skill is required, regardless of location, race, or social status. What you are doing is a model for where I believe the future of education is going. It's on-demand training to meet the requirements of the real world, focused skill and knowledge acquisition, and finally, embracing lifelong learning. I spent most of my career, almost 20 years of it, as a designer and a design leader in the tech industry in Silicon Valley. It was a fantastic learning experience. I worked with people from all over the world. I wish I'd worked with Boss, but I know Boss. I got a chance to travel the world, and I created deep friendships that have lasted decades, literally decades. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I mean, it changed my life. It really did. But it was almost a happy accident that I actually found a design career in tech. You see, my educational background was in psychology, not design, not even computer science. I mean, I always had an interest in design, and I have dabbled in programming throughout the years, but my formal education was in psychology and literature, of all things, literature. I wish there had been opportunities like Brave Achievers when I was young, trying to find my way in the world, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I would have benefited from learning all about design and the tech industry from experienced people like your teachers and the guest lecturers and all of you. Instead, I had to learn on my own, kind of fumbling and bumbling my way through the years, slowly but surely. You already have an amazing head start, and I'm sure that you're going to accomplish more extraordinary things than I did. The world is changing rapidly. Yeah, I know we always say that, but the world of remote work and the tech industry, it's transformed more this year than in any past decade of my career. And speaking of being old, I started my career at IBM way back in 1993. Even then, we were talking about virtual reality, rapid prototyping, building software without coding skills, distributed teams, and remote collaboration. And I remember at the time, we thought that this futuristic world was just around the corner. I was young and I would attend talks at various tech firms in the evening. And you could feel like the passion and the excitement in the rooms. I know we felt like we were on the verge of something that would change the world. We witnessed the rise of the web and the evolution of mobile devices and apps. Some of these changes have been life-altering, while unfortunately some have been disappointing. But the one thing that hasn't changed is the passion and the belief that we design and build things that change the world. We want to make the world a better place for everyone. Things haven't moved as quickly as we all hoped. Opportunities have not been as fairly distributed as we had dreamed that they would be. However, in the tragedy of the current pandemic, we are also experiencing a renewed ambition to address these issues, level the playing field, and fix the world. I believe in you, and I believe that you will be the ones who do that. I see it in the eyes of my own children, who are pretty close to your ages. You won't settle for anything less. I see that. We won't be going back to the old ways of doing business. We are unleashing global opportunities that will enable anyone living anywhere with any background to participate in this new economy. I see at least three exciting ways that our new remote world is changing things for the better, certainly for people who have access to technology. And that's in education, mentoring, and opportunities. I mean, education is now, it's at our fingertips. It's no longer locked behind the walls of a few universities. Everyone with a love for learning has more opportunities than ever before to access knowledge, training, and educators like you see today. When I was in the middle of my tech industry career, there were barriers to entry for so many jobs. I mean, your resume, it wouldn't even get past the gatekeepers unless you had a specific degree from a specific set of schools. I'm surprised by how long these restrictions persisted at some companies. But as I moved into management, many of us began to question some of these job requirements. I mean, if someone had the right skills, the right attitude, and the right experience, why should we care what their degree was? Why should the name of their school matter so much? And I remember interviewing a young man who came by the office to talk with me one evening. He was smart, he was proactive, and very ambitious. I mean, he showed me the work he had done and even small independent businesses he had built and operated. We started to brainstorm some product and design concepts on the whiteboard. And by the end of that conversation, I knew that I wanted to hire him. Now, he had no college degree at all. He was completely self-taught, taught himself programming. So typically his resume, it wouldn't have made it past the screener. I would never have met him. But he was driven, he was eager to learn, and he had the skills that we needed. So I hired him. We've stayed in touch over the years ever since then. And I've watched his career grow, and he's now the CTO of a successful startup. So what you have accomplished here reminded me of his story. You took ownership of your educational path to take control of your future. And as we all know, education is a lifelong pursuit. People with a growth mindset are always learning, developing, and adapting to the constantly changing environment we live in. Luckily, access to brilliant mentors around the world is also now available with a quick video chat. We can collaborate with colleagues in dozens of time zones. For example, I have two co-hosts on a podcast that I help produce. One is a young lady in Costa Rica. We've been friends for many years. I've never actually met her in person. I mean, not once. And the other guy I met at a conference in Canada many years ago. We stayed in touch over the years, and he now lives in Pennsylvania, which is on the opposite coast of where I live. And I think we've only met twice in person. So we're no longer limited to interacting with people in the next cubicle, down the hall, or in the corporate cafeteria. When I was a young designer, it was a little challenging to find mentors and advisors who could guide me in my career. It wasn't that easy to talk with people in the design community either. I mean, we had the occasional local meetups, we had annual conferences, but that was about it. And that's all changed for the better now. There are so many online design communities, people supporting each other, sharing concepts to get feedback, and receiving guidance to help navigate their design careers. And that's one reason that I formed my own community and started helping people. I wish that young me had access to resources like this so many years ago. So now I want to make sure that no one else ever feels alone. Community is so essential for designers. If you haven't already found one, I encourage you to do so. My design friends and my network have been invaluable throughout every single step of my career. I want to take a moment and talk more about the value of a powerful network. That's one of the most crucial pieces of advice that I always give people. And now I want to share that with you. Invest in your network. Over the years, you will add more mentors to your network, but you will also want to add a trusted circle of peers, advisors, champions, and sponsors. When I was younger, my network was pretty haphazard. It kind of organically grew, and I added in friends and coworkers and people I had bumped into at conferences. I didn't fully understand how valuable a powerful and intentional, and that's the key word, is intentional, network was. And to be fair, LinkedIn has made this a lot easier now. It didn't even exist back then. I mean, LinkedIn didn't launch until 2003. And by then, I was already in the middle of my career at eBay. But I got lucky, really. I was very lucky. I worked at some great companies like IBM, Apple, eBay, and Yahoo. I worked with tremendously talented people like Sue McGarry. I've also done a lot of public speaking over the past 16 years or so. And so that's helped me build a really great network. We stay in touch, we support each other, and we know that we can reach out when we need help or advice. I mean, looking back, I should have recognized how important this was much, much earlier. I mean, as I look at it, every single job that I've had in my tech career was made possible thanks to my network connections. A few years ago, someone was asking me how I went about applying to my past jobs. And I started to answer, and then I realized I haven't. I've never applied cold for a job. Okay, that's not entirely true. I mean, before my tech career, I did. I followed the traditional job search and the job application process. But once I began my tech career, not once. I mean, as I mentioned, I got my start at IBM, and that was because my advisor had a past student who worked there. If I remember correctly, I was in his office one afternoon, and we were talking about jobs and internships and so forth. He picked up the phone and he called his old student, and he asked if IBM was hiring designers, and he said that they were. So my advisor, he looked at me and said, "Are you interested?" Right there on the spot. I was like, yes. I mean, what else are you going to say? So I joined IBM, and that was the beginning of my design career in tech. And that's when I fell in love with Silicon Valley. I mean, it was, and still is, an amazing place. And this pattern repeated itself over the years. My job at Apple came about thanks to a warm introduction to the design team from a past intern. That intern was a friend of mine and a student with me at the time. Later, I was pulled away from Apple to join a small startup by yet another design friend who was working with them. And after that startup was acquired, and I started running my own design agency, and I worked with a whole bunch of startups and companies during that time, I was pulled back into the corporate world again by a friend who was running the design organization at eBay. And a few years later, and this one's kind of funny, believe it or not, my old head of design from Apple persuaded me to join Yahoo, where she was at the time, and to help her run the search team there. So my network made my career path possible. It also accelerated the growth of my current business as a leadership coach, career advisor, and business advisor. It's a big, big world. And the tech industry is so competitive. It's probably fair to say that almost every industry is really competitive now. However, you don't need to conquer this challenge alone. Build and nurture your network of mentors, advisors, champions, and supportive peers. They will help you find new and amazing opportunities, and they will support you in your career development. So, finally, speaking of opportunity, more and more global career opportunities are becoming available. You're no longer required to leave your hometown, your family, or your friends to find a great job. I mean, I grew up in the Midwest in the US, in Nebraska. Now, you may not be familiar with that state. I wouldn't blame you, but hardly anyone goes there intentionally. It's not a destination. So after college, I knew that I had to leave. I wasn't aware of any tech jobs in Nebraska. In those days, you had very few options. But of course, the biggest and best place to have a design job in tech was Silicon Valley. So eventually I ended up moving to California. Now, I've loved my time in California. I've been here over 20 years. I'm not complaining, but it's not the most affordable place to live. And it has its issues. Some people are moving away more than ever before this year. Some people turn down jobs that would require them to relocate to California. And I don't blame them for feeling that way. Not everyone wants to live here, and they shouldn't be forced to either. Thankfully, over the past years, opportunities for designers in tech have popped up all over the world. I'm always hearing about the new Silicon Valley that's being created in other cities and countries all over the world. However, I'm even more excited by what's happened this year with respect to remote work. The path, it's been a bumpy one, to say the least. Some years I felt like we were making good progress. And then in other years, companies would frown on remote work and they'd reverse their policies. In 2020, we had no choice but to make it work. Despite some misgivings, lots of misgivings, and some issues that, yeah, we still need to solve. Research has shown that we're more productive than ever before. People are working harder than ever before. Most people have said they want to keep doing it, and some never want to return to a traditional office. I personally haven't worked in a traditional office in over 10 years. My podcast co-host and I have discussed the use of the phrase remote work. Is it really remote work when everyone is remote? Is that really the right way to think about it? And perhaps a better way to describe what is possible now is location independence. You can work from anywhere. Attitudes are finally shifting, finally. Tools are almost good enough. I should say almost. I'm sure all of us have lots of complaints about the tools we're using. And global access to the internet is slowly but surely improving. Soon you will be able to work for any company from anywhere in the world. And I don't think we fully realize how much this will change our lives and the world for the better. I wish that this transformation had occurred so many years ago. I would have loved the life that I now know you will be able to live. I'm excited for you and your future. Your growth mindset, your love for learning, and your burning ambition will serve you well in both work and life. Stay in touch with each other. Build your networks. Be proud of what you've accomplished. Be bold about sharing what you're capable of doing. Be bold. Now go forth and conquer this brave new world.